Hello, everybody. How you doing out there? Welcome. I'm Lee Camp. This is Dangerous Ideas. Let's do this. Let's get it going. The Israel Special Genocide Operation continues. We're talking 28,000 people murdered, 70% of them women and children, over 100,000. And now the UN has acknowledged this as well. Over 100,000 people in 4 months have been made either dead, missing, or injured. 100,000 people. This is an ongoing genocide, and I will be talking more about that, bringing you some updates, as well as bringing you updates about the really, it's a mutiny in a lot of ways, the mutiny that is ongoing within various aspects of the U.S. socio-political system, including the media, due to the endorsement and facilitation of this genocide. I'm going to bring you more updates on that. It really is impressive to see a lot of people stand up who are in the establishment. They are part of this system, which you rarely ever see. Now, for people like you and me, you go, well, why weren't you standing up for the past 10, 20 years? But to now see people that are actually entrenched in these systems standing up and fighting back, it is pretty big, pretty exciting. Although it's tough to be excited about anything as a genocide goes on, but obviously all of those standing up and fighting back against it are a very positive thing. I'm also going to bring you. Actually later in the hour, I'm going to obliterate Ben Shapiro. I'm going to destroy. I'm going to decimate Ben Shapiro. That's coming later in this hour. But let's start off with the epic, the unprecedented win that Joe Biden has had in this primary. I mean, just so incredible that he was able to pull this out. What he, as a candidate, he just gets you fired up and excited, doesn't he? Hashtag sarcasm. So here is MSNBC reporting on this iconic, legendary moment of Joe Biden winning South Carolina.
Counties that are reporting substantial vote here. As I said, the 3 counties with the lowest proportions, it's basically all from this county, which I can show you. It's about 1/5 of the vote in Charleston County. It's almost unanimous for Biden with what's...
Anyway, all meaningless. I'm not going to play much of that because it's so stupid. But all of it utterly meaningless in this ridiculous kabuki theater of who's going to win the Democratic primary. Now, of course, this is thanks to immense primary rigging, not just in this election by the Democrats. Now, the Republicans rig their own crap, and they do their efforts to rig the general election. Democrats do their efforts to rig the general election, and it is a ridiculous political theater. It's called political theater because it is borderline meaningless, but it gets everyone excited. You talk about it for 2 straight years or whatever it is, and everyone runs around and spends a lot of their time, a lot of their effort, a lot of their mental bandwidth talking about this garbage rather than actually creating change, rather than actually creating a better world, rather than actually creating equality and justice and fighting against a genocide, for example, as Joe Biden and Donald Trump endorse fully this genocide. Anyone who thinks that Donald Trump is any different on this genocide, you are severely fooling yourself, extremely fooling yourself. But I just wanted to go through a few of the ways that this primary, as with really the primaries before, but there's a couple of differences with this one, and how this primary is rigged. And we're talking specifically, for those of you who want to say, why don't you call it the Democrats? I mean, the Republicans. For those of you thinking that this is specifically about the Democratic primary that's happening right now, I am not talking about all the ways Republicans rig their own shit. But anyway, so shock, Biden runs away with it. Well, first of all, let's talk about the fact that the Democrats successfully got RFK Jr. to drop out of the Democratic primary. Now, RFK Jr., if you actually break down what he's been saying and what he's been saying about Israel, he is a lunatic on a lot of things. Now, I have talked positively about some of his stuff in the past because he says some things that you won't hear from politicians at times, and I found those things to be positive ideas. I promote ideas rather than promoting people like I'm, some sort of part of a cult that follows just an individual. Anyway, so saying crazy stuff, but that's all an aside. RFK Jr. was forced to drop out, and he was actually a legitimate threat to Joe Biden winning the primary in many ways. they've got him to drop out in multiple ways. One of them is just sheer issues with ballot access. That's one of the ways they have this rigged. It's just getting on the ballots is very difficult. But on top of that, they had threatened him, and they were putting forward something that would make him and other Democratic primary challengers have to pay for the primary, which would have been millions of dollars out of their pockets, out of the pockets of RFK Jr. and Marianne Williamson, etc. So even rich people don't like to spend millions of dollars out of their own pockets. So they successfully got him to drop out, which was one of the biggest ways that they rigged this latest primary. But also, because Biden barely won, right? Bernie Sanders, he almost won 2016. They had to rig that against him. He almost won 2020. They had to rig that against him. Biden was just getting destroyed in 2020, as you'll recall, in the primaries until South Carolina he won, and then they got all the others to drop out with the exception of Elizabeth Warren and endorse him so that all their support could be funneled behind Joe Biden. That was one of the way they rigged it, but that's not really the biggest way. The biggest way is sheer money and mainstream media. The fact that the mainstream media will talk endlessly about the people that support the corporatocracy, support the ruling elite. Those are the people that will be talked about. The others will occasionally get a hit piece done against them if they're lucky here or there. Cornel West will get a hit piece done against him here or there, but mainly, they just ignore them. That's one of their biggest ways of rigging these primaries against them. But another thing they've done recently is Iowa and New Hampshire were the opening two, right? Iowa's a caucus, New Hampshire's a primary. If you want to parse hairs, split hairs, rub yourself with hairs, whatever it is. So Iowa and New Hampshire often went for the more left wing, the more kind of radical, even if just slightly, candidate than the others. Bernie Sanders, especially in 2016, was more left-wing, was more radical than the other candidates. And Iowa would often go for that candidate because they think for themselves a little bit more than a lot of other states. But on top of that, the caucus, you have to get together and you got to argue with people. You got to tell them what's good about the candidate. That tends to favor someone who actually legitimately stands for something. Now, you're going to talk about what the hell Bernie Sanders has become now. But anyway, at the time, it seemed like he stood for something. And so it was much easier for, he was able to win the caucus or whatever. But they also did something else in Iowa, which was that ridiculous shadow app where they got everyone to put all the numbers into an app that was a catastrophe that they had built 2 weeks earlier with Pete Buttigieg's campaign. And so it basically destroyed the Iowa caucus, which was what they wanted because they knew Bernie Sanders would win it. Then New Hampshire, they took away, the Democratic Party took away New Hampshire's first primary status. So, and they said South Carolina was going to be the first primary. Now, they claimed it was because of diversity. It wasn't because of diversity. It was because New Hampshire often goes with their own person. They often think outside the box. They often don't go along those normal lines of what is expected by the ruling elite. And so, for that reason, they're scary to your candidates, the ruling elite. So they took away their status as first in the country, put it with South Carolina. New Hampshire said, screw you, we're going to do it anyway. DNC then took away their delegates, meaning their primary vote didn't count at all. It didn't. They could do it, and they did it, but it doesn't have delegates. But they also threatened the candidates and said, if you run in New Hampshire, then like all your delegates will be taken away. Basically, if you go and campaign in New Hampshire, you will lose your ability to ever possibly win this primary. So they screwed over New Hampshire. They then made South Carolina, which is the one Joe Biden just ran away with. They made that the first one in the country, first primary at least, instead of caucus. And they knew that South Carolina is very favorable to Joe Biden and to the ruling establishment Democratic candidates like Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton. And so here's Joe Biden running away with it. Somehow he beat Marianne Williamson and other guy, Dean Phillips, whoever the hell he is. Somehow he was able to pull it out. But of course, this is rigged on so many levels. And, I've just listed a few of them. But the massive amounts of money, the super delegates, of course, if those were to come into play later, which they won't. But also the other thing that nobody seems to talk about is since 2016, after Bernie Sanders nearly won the nomination, despite all of the rigging, he almost won it on top of all the rigging. It was beat the rigging. They added something into the DNC rules, which said they could reject any candidate that basically wasn't Democratic enough. If you don't fit our party lines enough, then we can just decide after all the voting, after America has spoken and said, that's the guy, we can decide, nah, you're not the guy. You're not the lady. And they can just throw it out. Now, that's kind of a nuclear option because it pisses off all the voters and everything, but they would have used it. If RFK Jr. had won, or if Bernie Sanders had won in 2020, they would have used that nuclear option of just like, we've been studying your writings and you just aren't the guy for us. It's funny. We hadn't realized it until just now. But they can do that now. So the Democratic primaries, as they said in court, the DNC lawyer said in court that they can rig the primaries. It's not, they have no legal responsibility to have a fair primary election. That's not in their laws that they need to. So they could just go into a back room and rig it. The lawyers actually said that in court. And that's kind of what they do. They just don't admit it. But here you have this kabuki theater. You have this mainstream media jumps on TV and goes, here it's so important that everyone voted for. Look at how great Joe Biden did. Wow, what a candidate. Oh my God, is he kicking butt? And it's all garbage. It's all bull. Okay. So let's move on from that garbage and get into the growing mutiny, which I find rather important, but I guess many people, your mainstream media, of course, isn't going to cover it, at least not well. You might have an article here or there, which is some of the articles I'm going to show you. But the genocide, Israel's genocide against Gazans is growing. Here is a very large march, thousands, if not tens of thousands, in not Washington, D.C., New York City, just this past weekend. People across the country continue to protest, continue to step up and fight back against this genocide, against the murder of 28,000 innocent people in just 4 months. Really is unprecedented, at least in recent decades, in terms of the sheer number of innocent people killed. It really is repulsive. And anyway, in terms of a positive, other than these people marching and everything, you are seeing some of the people in the establishment, in the socio-political machine of this empire, standing up and fighting back. And and I'm going to talk about some of the other ones. Here is the latest one. And I do consider our mainstream media, because they are the bullhorn, the propaganda bullhorn of the establishment, of the empire, of the U.S. empire. So they are an arm of war and the manufacturing consent of war, of our government. And so I don't consider them as a separate thing. They are part and parcel. And so, as you can see here, Guardian reporting on it, CNN staff says the network's pro-Israel slant amounts to journalistic malpractice. This is their own staff protesting against CNN, which of course takes, the traditional expression would be balls, but as many pointed out, vaginas are far more impressive. So it takes vaginas to stand up. I mean, we could make it even gender-wise and just say gonads, because everyone's got gonads. So it takes gonads to stand up like this when you could lose your job. CNN is facing a backlash from its own staff over editorial policies they say have led to a regurgitation. I would say more of a vomitous regurgitation, like a pure vomit, like chunky vomit regurgitation of Israeli propaganda and the censoring of Palestinian perspectives in the network's coverage of the war in Gaza. It's not a war in Gaza, by the way. That's the Guardian doing their little part of propaganda. It's not a war in Gaza. A war in Gaza would be two equal sides fighting, or at least even remotely close to equal sides. This is just a genocide. It's just bombing of innocents, bombing of a school. When you see a school or a hospital bombed intentionally, not by accident, do you go, wow, what a great battle they fought in that war? Does anyone say that? Does anyone see a blown up hospital intentionally, not whoopsie, intentionally, and go, man, that was a tough battle, but they pulled it out. No, because it's not a battle. It's just an obliteration. It's just a genocide. Journalists in CNN newsrooms in the U.S. and overseas say broadcasts have been skewed by management edicts and a story approval process that has resulted in highly partial coverage of the Hamas massacre and Israel's retaliatory attack on Gaza. And let's remember that at least half, if not more, of the massacring that went on October 7th was done by the IDF. Likely a lot more than half, but the majority of news since the war began, regardless of how accurate the initial reporting, has been skewed by a systemic and institutional bias within the network toward Israel, one CNN staffer said. Ultimately, CNN's coverage of the Israel-Gaza war amounts to journalistic malpractice. And here's a couple of reasons why this is important and why this isn't just like, oh, that's funny. A couple of people at CNN are angry. First of all, it takes a lot to get people within these systems to realize that their system is wrong, is screwed up, is not legitimate. These are the people that have worked their lives, even if they're young, even if they're 30 or 25, still, they worked their adult lives towards gaining position in these companies, towards getting that job. And when they scored that CNN job, it was probably the biggest deal you can imagine in their lives. They were like, oh my God, I did it. I'm working at one of the biggest news channels in the country, in the world. They probably were very excited. And so to break through that helmet of BS, you got to believe to work there, and to get to the real human being underneath, and to have them realize that what's being done on the network that they were so excited to work at does not fit with their moral core. That is a big deal, and it takes a lot, and it especially takes a lot when you are surrounded by that propaganda, by that garbage. And so that is a big deal that you're seeing people break out of their mindset that they've spent their adult lives working at and get free of it, and not just get free of it, not just start thinking this doesn't seem right, but being so sure of what is being of the horror that is being perpetrated right now in Gaza, that they're willing to risk their jobs, willing to stand up and fight back against CNN, which is, let's be honest, an arm of our government, as is Fox News, as is MSNBC. Anyone who thinks there's a real difference between the core issues of Fox News and CNN, well, you've fallen for their parlor tricks. They did it. They got you thinking that as long as you're on two separate sides of trans rights, then it's a completely different world. No, it's not a different world. They're endorsing the capitalist, settler, colonial view of the world, of how to murder and exploit and abuse in order to enrich a tiny number of people. They all agree on that, and they're all excited to keep telling you how great it is. So yeah, it is impressive to see people at CNN standing up. But as I was saying, this mutiny is not just within the media. It's not just CNN. And I brought to you most of these stories as they were happening. But when you put them all together, you see that there's an ongoing mutiny inside our empire, inside the U.S. government empire, and inside the corporate media arm of that empire. This is from, let's see, this is back in December. The White House interns have been protesting as well. Other staff penning a letter demanding a ceasefire in Gaza, which of course goes against what Biden and his criminal cabal that are in the White House right now stand for. In another sign of growing dissent brewing in Washington over the Biden administration's steady support for Israel's military campaign in Gaza, a group of more than 40 interns at the White House have signed a letter demanding Joe Biden call for a permanent ceasefire. And again, it may seem small because a lot of you go, I was demanding a ceasefire from day one. I get that. A lot of you, most of you probably saying that, but it may seem small, but these are the people in the systems of power working their way up, even if it's interns. And do you think these people rely on interns, unpaid interns? Yeah, the whole system is abusive, and one of them is unpaid interns. That's one of the other ways that they achieve their ongoing efforts at the bureaucracy that the empire requires is to have these tons of minions, but those minions appear to be waking up. But again, that's White House interns. That is not the last. Let's see, where are the others? Oh, I think I'm over here. The other another one I covered just the other day is Samantha Power with USAID. Did I have that one open? Maybe not. Anyway, I covered it just the other day. She was confronted by her own staff. USAID is a very large U.S. aid organization. Now, it is actually a CIA cutout. They and NED have actually said, I don't think they're happy they said this, but the head of NED said several years ago that they are doing what the CIA used to do in many regards, but doesn't want to be connected to nowadays, which is go into countries, pretend you're bringing aid, and you may actually bring a lot of aid. But you're bringing that aid while doing various things to try and coup the regime or bring down the government or make sure that, socialism doesn't take hold or things like that. So, yes, USAID does provide aid while it is trying to bring down governments. Anyway, Samantha Powers, she was confronted in a public setting, public Q&A by her own staff, saying, you wrote about genocide and you're still working for the administration. You should resign and speak out, said the former USAID staff member. And that's just one example. Who knows what's going on behind closed doors? There's a lot of talk that behind closed doors, many of these organizations, USAID, State Department, White House, are having a lot of discussions trying to convince various staff that endorsing and facilitating this genocide, this is a U.S.-backed genocide, facilitating it is worth it, is good, is just. And so this is public. This is what's happening in public. This isn't even behind the closed doors. But again, yet another, mutinous act. And think about how rarely you see this. Think about all the horror show that the U.S. is involved in around the world, killing 1 million people in Iraq, killing 6 million people total in the global war on terror over 23 years. Helping Saudi Arabia murder the people of Yemen, Syria, Libya. They're involved in all that, and you almost never see what's happening right now. You almost never see the internal workings, the minions no longer willing to fight for what the U.S. government is telling them is so-called right. They know it's not right. They know bombing hospitals and killing children at this level is just unbelievably wrong. And so you are seeing these people, I don't know what the percentages are. I'm not saying all of them. A lot of them are true believers, and they're going to die wrong, one day. They're never going to get it. They're never going to figure it out. But a lot of them are really fighting back in an impressive way. And here's, I brought this to you at the time as well, a State Department official who resigned back in October after just a few weeks of this genocide being perpetrated. State Department official resigns over Biden administration's handling of Israel-Hamas conflict. Josh Paul, who said he has worked in the Bureau of Political Military Affairs for more than 11 years, said in his LinkedIn post, and he then did interviews on mainstream media, that he resigned due to a policy disagreement concerning our continued lethal assistance to Israel. And think about that. That guy, he's been a part of the State Department, worked his entire adult life. He's like 40 or in his 40s or something. Entire adult life. Facilitated working with the State Department while we murdered people in Africa, murdered people in Syria, murdered people in Iraq and Afghanistan and Haiti and Venezuela via economic war. All these murders he was down for. And yet now it's too much because This is so in your face. So in your face. Like, anyone who doesn't see this and go, oh, that's what genocide looks like. That's what ethnic cleansing looks like. They are out of their goddamn mind. And if you need to be reminded, that's coming from a Jew, from a dirty Jew. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that because the algorithm might ban my channel, but I'm not that dirty, honestly. I clean up. I'm kind of cleanish. Anyway, you're seeing this mutiny in just like a lot of different ways, and it is big. And and actually it's on us. It's on those people in the streets protesting. It's on, and I've gone to several. I went to the big one in Washington, D.C. as well. But it's on all of us who are sharing these videos, who continue to talk about it despite the suppression. I am one of the most suppressed and censored voices in America, but you guys have been making sure these videos get out, but not just my stuff. So many important videos from Breakthrough News, from Mint Press, from all these great independent outlets, Gray Zone, about what is happening there. And of course, the outlets that are over in that region as well. Haaretz has done some important reporting, Middle East Eye, and then there's things like Electronic Intifada. Anyway, you guys are making sure that these articles, these videos, and these first-person stories and all this stuff is getting out there, even despite all of the suppression. I mean, could you imagine if this stuff wasn't suppressed? If this genocide right now, coverage of this genocide wasn't suppressed, it would be all anyone is talking about, and it's pretty close anyway. But yeah, so right now I'm going to get to a bunch of other important news story. Oh yeah, John Podesta back in the news. Gotta love that guy. Thank goodness he's back. The Biden administration's put him back in charge of something. So I'll be talking about that. Oh yeah, also someone very close to Netanyahu has just admitted the efforts to kill every hostage, which is, again, it's all this stuff's being admitted. It's like you see people trying to deny this stuff. You see Bill Maher and all these pieces of human garbage acting like it's like, no, these is admitted. Like, they're Israeli officials admitting this stuff. So actually, I'll bring you that story right now because we're on the topic of Israel. And Israel's ongoing genocide. By the way, it's just about 28,000. I couldn't find out whether it's hit 28,000 yet of innocent people murdered by Israel. But the UN did say, now I reported 100,000 a couple of weeks ago, but it takes time for the UN to process some of these numbers. But the UN is also saying that it's 100,000 people have been killed, injured, or missing in 4 months. Truly, I run out of adjectives. I do for how horrific this is. Also, later in this hour, coming up soon, I am going to destroy Ben Shapiro. I'm going to obliterate Ben Shapiro. You got to use those words, otherwise no one clicks on it, apparently. I don't know why no one clicks on Lee Camp tells the truth about the things that Ben Shapiro gets wrong. No, it's got, I decimate Ben Shapiro. That's coming up in this hour, so hang in there. But let me do this first. Where'd it go? Oh, sorry. Trying to talk and do everything all at once. It is an issue. Okay, so this is a quote from Netanyahu's son. He posted it on his Telegram channel. This is Netanyahu's son. Now, many of you know about the Hannibal Directive, which I've talked about a lot. The directive in Israel, internally in Israel, to, if someone's taken hostage, to kill the hostage takers, and kill anyone nearby. That is the plan. Do not let any hostages live. That is their directive, called the Hannibal Directive. And they've had it for years, but it was clearly being put into play October 7th. The goal was murder everyone. And we saw it again and again. Anyway, and it's here is Netanyahu's son. And I don't know how old he is. Looks like in his 20s. So this is not a 4-year-old. In case for those of you wondering, when he says Netanyahu's son, are we talking like 6, 8 years old? He said, there is a procedure called the Hannibal Directive. The planes that were supposed to be in the air on the Gaza border were supposed to destroy everything that moves there, crush everything. And thus we would not have 256 prisoners. The fact that did not bomb, I think he means they did not bomb, means that there is a problem with the Air Force. He's saying, and you got to figure his opinions are probably the same as his father's. He's saying that they should have, and the goal was, because they were under the Hannibal Directive, the goal was to murder everything that moved, meaning Hamas, the hostages Hamas was taking, anyone nearby, such as everyone at the Nova Music Festival that was fleeing, which explains why they cut off the exits and then started shooting and bombing everyone. He's saying they didn't do enough. They didn't kill enough innocent people on October 7th. Whereas even though the IDF killed loads of innocent people, that I have brought you evidence after evidence after evidence that a lot of the people killed on October 7th were due to the IDF. Anyway, so he's saying they didn't kill enough. They should have killed everyone. And these are, as all the evidence shows, these are the same opinions as his father. And it also goes to show like the moral standpoint that these people inhabit, where they live morally. It is their moral core is non-existent. They are morally bankrupt, and they think the goal is to kill everyone, innocent civilians and anyone else. And we're seeing that. We're seeing that by the way the IDF behaves in Israel right now. We are seeing it. And let's see, where is the clip from the State Department spokesperson responding to, this is our State Department responding to, responding to a question about, I brought it to you the other day, that the IDF dressed up, a special unit in the IDF dressed up as doctors and patients, one of them carrying a folded wheelchair, one of them dressed as a doctor, ran into a hospital in Gaza and murdered, I believe, 3 Palestinians in their beds as they slept. And it is a war crime to dress as enemy soldiers or to dress as doctors. But of course, Israel is, could you imagine the list of war crimes that Israel's committing right now? It'd be, you'd be going for hours. Anyway, here is the response of our State Department. Someone's asking whether Rumble is free. Rumble is free. So in a few minutes, I will be going over to rumble.com/Lee Camp to continue this live stream. It is free to watch there. Okay, so here is the response of Matt Miller, the spokesperson for our State Department, when he was asked whether the U.S. government endorses that action, the IDF dressing up as doctors, which is a war crime, and going in and shooting people in their beds.
Israel has the right to carry out anti-terrorism operations.
Yeah. See, now he's avoiding answering the question. He's saying they have the right to carry out anti-terrorism as operations, but that's not the question. The question was, do you have a right to commit war crimes? Do you have a right to dress as doctors and dress as the enemy and etc. and go and murder people in their beds? So by taking, this is a propaganda technique, by rephrasing the question into something you can answer, he is able to answer. He's then fine. He's cleared himself of the reality of having to answer the question, which the behind closed doors answer is, yeah, the U.S. is fine with Israel committing all kinds of war crimes, or else we wouldn't be sending them bombs to drop on children. But that's the behind closed doors answer. The answer in public is rephrase the question in a way that you can act like it's fine.
Israel has the right to carry out anti-terrorism operations, right, to bring members of Hamas to justice. But as I said, we want them to be carried out in full compliance with international humanitarian law.
So they say that. But when he's asked, Does that mean you are condemning the IDF action where they dressed as doctors and murdered 3 people? He won't answer that. But you just said you want them to do it in line with humanitarian law. It's all garbage. It's all theater. And anyone who watches these and thinks they somehow represent anything the U.S. government believes, anything, is out of their mind. They've been eating paint chips. They've been sucking down mercury thermometers. That is the only way you believe a word coming out of this man's mouth.
I'm asking you, is this a conduct befitting a state that controls every single person in that whole territory?
We think.
And when he says controls every single person in that territory, he means Gaza. And you may go, well, what do you mean? Israel doesn't control every person. Yeah, they're in an open air prison. And what he means is they control the water. They control the medicine that goes in or out. They control whether anyone comes or goes, which if Palestine were a nation, it would be one of their rights under international law to come and go freely from your country. So Israel will never allow a 2-state solution because that would allow people in Gaza to come and go as they see fit. You cannot stop people. Imagine if the U.S. said no one from France is ever allowed to leave France again. It's illegal. So when Israel says they support a 2-state solution, they don't. It's a lie in order to get people to keep dealing with the diplomatic process and to not address the fact that Israel is an apartheid state. And so when he says controlling the people, he means that they surveil everything they do. They control their water. They control their medicine. They control their food. They control whether they leave to get life-saving medical procedures, which is why in Gaza, the life expectancy if you get breast cancer is like 20% or something. The life expectancy if you get breast cancer in the United States or percentage of those who live is like 80 to 90%. Most people in the United States, if they get breast cancer, they will survive. In Gaza, most will die because they're not allowed to leave Gaza and go to a hospital that can handle the procedures.
I think it is appropriate that they have the ability to bring members of Hamas to justice.
Again, rephrase it and into a way that that is not what he's asking.
But as I said, it needs to be done in compliance with international humanitarian law.
But if that were the case, if the U.S. actually stood by that, it has to be done in compliance with humanitarian law, then the U.S. wouldn't send tens of thousands of bombs to Israel since October 7th. That's not even talking about everything we sent them before. Tens of thousands of bombs since October 7th. We wouldn't have military right now in Israel advising them on how to perpetrate their genocide. We wouldn't have CIA, this is according to the New York Times, CIA helping Israel assassinate Palestinians. We wouldn't have, this is according to The Intercept, we wouldn't have, well, actually, it's according to a memo either leaked or released by the Pentagon, either accidentally released or released, not officially released, but it was a Pentagon memo telling troops in Iraq, U.S. troops, to be on standby to facilitate and support an invasion of Gaza. U.S. troops are on standby right now to possibly facilitate an invasion of Gaza. You wouldn't have all of that going on if you actually wanted to hold Israel accountable for their actions and have them behave in a way that was in line with humanitarian law. You wouldn't. Okay, so I want to talk about UNRWA for a minute. UNRWA. I talked about it some the other day. You probably know the beginning of this, and I was pronouncing it UNRWA. Apparently, those in the know, the cool kids who spend a lot of time around UNRWA, pronounce it UNRWA. Now, I'm sure that they're pronouncing the R, and I'm incapable of doing that. UNRWA. I can't do it, so I'm saying UNRWA. Anyway, it is a UN. Is a UN organization that is very pivotal in helping Palestinians get things like food and education and medical needs met. And here, I'm telling you this because I didn't know this. I covered UNRWA the other day. The U.S. has been bombing UNRWA offices, has killed over 100 UN employees. It's the most UN employees ever killed in any conflict. So Israel is targeting UN, United Nations employees. And it's, again, most killed in any conflict. So the ICJ, I'll run through this real quick because I've covered it before, but the ICJ, the International Court of Justice, they found against Israel in the preliminary hearing. It goes further, but it might take 2 years or something. But the preliminary hearing was about whether there's enough evidence of genocide to further the case and whether to throw it out or not. They found against Israel in terms of there is enough proof of genocide to continue the case. Israel did not like this. The U.S. tried to all kinds of ways to ignore it or to pretend it was the reverse decision, but that's what they found. So Israel's response the following day was to say that 12 UN employees of UNRWA, were involved in October 7th. Basically, UN employees helped in October 7th, helped Hamas in October 7th. Now, first of all, the sources have already lowered the number from 12 to 6. And on top of that, what is the proof that UN employees helped in October 7th? Tortured Palestinians. Palestinians that Israel's torturing that are willing to say anything they want, so Israel got them to say it. So far, there's been no evidence. Despite that, the U.S. and so many other Western nations, Canada, etc., have withdrawn their funding of UNRWA. Now, that wouldn't be a big deal if it were a small aid organization. But here's what I didn't know when I was covering this before. UNRWA is massive, and it is pivotal to the survival of Palestinians in these refugee camps, in Gaza, in West Bank, and other areas. Here's from 2014. So this is 10 years old. So it's bigger now, but this is 10 years old. They have 139 primary health facilities. I'm sure Israel's bombed a bunch of them, but primary health facilities based in or near UNRWA settlements and camps, 3,000 health staff, 30,000 employees, 3.13 million refugees accessing health services from UNRWA, and 9.3 million annual patient visits to these health services. It operates also one of the largest school systems in the Middle East, spanning 711 elementary and preparatory schools. 711 schools. It has been the main provider of basic education to Palestinian refugee children since 1950. So the reason Israel wants to destroy UNRWA, and I played clips for you the other day of Israeli ministers, one of them at least, saying this is a month ago, saying that Israel needed to destroy UNRWA, the UNRWA. And the reason Israel feels they need to destroy this UN aid organization is because it actually allows Palestinians to live. A lot of Palestinians would die from various preventable diseases, would not get the health services they need, but also would not get any education and food as well. So there are a lot of ways this organization has proven pivotal to the survival of Palestinians, and that is why Israel is murdering them, killing more than any other conflict, is defunding them, is getting other countries to defund them. Anyway, I thought that was a very important fact about the size of this organization. And besides the fact that, and I mentioned this the other day as well, if you have an organization with 30,000 people and 12 of them were involved in October 7th, you still can't commit a genocide. That's insane. It's effing insane to commit a genocide against an organization because you claim 12 people out of 30,000 were involved. Again, it would be like if Amazon found out 12 people were involved in a car theft, 12 Amazon employees, so Amazon was banned around the world. Now, I hate Amazon, so I'd be fine with that. But that's not the point. The point is, it's lunacy. Okay. Let me, before I get to, and this is clearly going to be a longer episode than normal, before I get to obliterating Ben Shapiro, oh my God, I'm gonna rip him limb from, oh man, it is happening. You are gonna see the Zionist Jew versus the anti-Zionist Jew throwdown coming up. Anyway, before I get to that, I want to show this is so the U.S. government, the Congress just had a hearing and a vote on defunding UNRWA, this massive aid organization that helps Palestinians live. And one of the Republican representatives, Representative Mast of Florida, and I believe even his LinkedIn says lunatic. He is more excited about this genocide than most. And Code Pink, always doing great work. Code Pink, Medea Benjamin, I've had her on this show several times. She and other Code Pink people confronted him in the halls of Congress about defunding UNRWA and about this genocide that he is so excited for.
Haven't seen the pictures of all the babies being killed.
These are not innocent Palestinian civilians across the world.
Did you catch that? The babies being killed are not innocent. How do you feel about that, folks? How does anyone feel about it? Like, does anyone see that and go, yep, totes, those guilty Palestinian babies? God, they are so awful. But let me continue.
When you're looking at the 500,000 people starving to death, are people that should go out there and put a government in place that doesn't go out there and attack Israel.
Here's the thing. Even if you want to believe all Israeli propaganda and all the garbage they spit out and everything, and you honestly, you think that every Hamas person, even the garbage collector that's in the Hamas government, even the health officials in the Hamas government, you want to believe they're all terrorists, even if you believe all that. The idea that everybody, 2.2, 2.3 million people in Gaza are part and parcel, are the same as the militants in their government, is just a level of savage idiocy that is tough to match. The idea that a baby, that a 5-year-old, he said the people that are starving are the same as their militants in the government in their area. That'd be like saying I'm the same as the guy in supporting the genocide right now, or the same as the U.S. soldier who's in Syria right now. It's just so dumb. It's just so dumb that everybody who's dying in this genocide is somehow responsible for the acts of people they have nothing to do with. It's just pathetic.
On a daily basis. So.
Kids or 7-year-olds, 7-year-olds, 9-year-olds. They destroyed.
And you'll notice when she says, he says, oh, they should go out and put in another government. She goes, the kids should go out and, like a 3-year-old should go out and put a different government in place in the open air prison of Gaza. That a different government. That's one hell of a damn 3-year-old or 2-year-old. Amazing.
More infrastructure in Gaza than they did in Dresden. So that is like
and there's more that needs to be destroyed.
I don't know if you could hear that. Someone not on screen, one of the Code Pinkers said that they've bombed more buildings and done more damage, destroyed more than was destroyed in the firebombing of Dresden. You, of course, know that one of the most horrific moments in World War II was an entire city just completely set on fire by Allied firebombing and just loads of innocent people. It wasn't even a real military target. It was just kind of showing we could set a German city on fire. And so she mentions Dresden, and his response is, well, and more needs to be destroyed. More of Gaza needs to be destroyed. Something like 70% of all buildings are damaged or destroyed already. IDF is now bulldozing cemeteries because they don't have enough living people left to murder. So they're now just bulldozing cemeteries. I mean, this guy is such a remarkable piece of garbage, but he represents And here's the difference between the Republicans and Democrats in Congress, right? The Republicans say things like that, where your skin crawls at the level of evil. And it, doesn't help that he looks like, I was going to say Cobra Commander, but I suppose Cobra Commander didn't have a bald head. He looks like that the guy in the movie Hitman with that evil dude, or the I guess Dr. Evil, maybe a little bit. You got some Dr. Evil there. You definitely have some oh my God, how am I forgetting this name? The name of the bad guy in Superman, Lex Luthor. You definitely have some Lex Luthor going on. Anyway, Republicans go out there and they just have that. They'll say those evil things that make your skin crawl. We need to kill more babies. Like, who even talks like that? But the Democrats will go forward and go, this is horrible. I agree. They need to, Israel needs to abide by humanitarian. That's what abide by humanitarian laws. And then they go behind closed doors and they all vote for the exact same thing. That's the difference. That is completely different. Keep in mind what the votes for Israel have been in our government. The votes on this genocide. 412-1 in the House. 97-0 in the Senate. There is no difference in the actual actions of the two parties. This is one capitalist, just colonial, just imperial party. That is all it is. And they will destroy everyone to continue to facilitate the hegemony, the United States hegemony. Yes, Roberto's telling me that he served in the IDF. I also saw that he had a Purple Heart. That guy had a Purple Heart in, I assume, the U.S. military. So I guess he served in both IDF and U.S. military. I did see a photo of him in IDF fatigues, and I wasn't sure if it was because he was in the IDF or he was doing it for funsies, for Halloweens. Anyway, doesn't matter. When you are serving the genocide for the U.S. empire, it doesn't matter what you did or how you acted. He served. By the way, every time I say the word served, I hit myself for it. He was in the idea. He didn't serve. Cut yourself of the propaganda terms, everybody. Cut them out. You gotta wrench them out. It's not easy because they're so deep. They're so deep in there. He was part of the IDF. He didn't serve. He didn't give you soft serve ice cream of the IDF. It's not soft serve. He was in. Anyway. Okay. Oh, yeah, I don't even have time for this, but Belgium was one of the only countries, I should tell you, Belgium was one of the only countries that has not defunded UNRWA, and for that, Israel has bombed the Belgian development offices in Gaza. That was Israel's response to Belgium not defunding one of the largest aid organizations in Palestine, Belgium Development Agency offices in Gaza were destroyed by a bomb. This appears to be the photo on the left appears to be before the bombing. The photo on the right, which is just a completely flattened ground, is that building after the U.S. U.S. and Israel obliterated it. So that's Israel's response to a country not defunding an aid organization. Okay, let's do it. I'm going to obliterate Ben Shapiro, decimate Ben Shapiro, just like I did Rachel Maddow and Bill Maher the other day. But I thought it was good to bring you a right winger rather than just the liberal trolls. Okay, all of that's at rumble.com/Lee Camp. Free to watch over there. Rumble.com/Lee Camp, as well as my locals page. Those of you on locals who are part of the community, you make this show possible. If any of you want to join and want to see this show continue, please join up at leecamp.net. It'll forward you to my locals page. But right now, if you want to watch for free, as I obliterate Ben Shapiro, it's at rumble.com/Lee Camp. Just click the first live video. If you don't see it immediately, you might have to click the live tab, and then you will see the video titled something about mutiny in the Biden government. and I will see you there. Everybody just give me a second to switch things over. And you all rock.